Hey, this is Professor Homa. Welcome to EX3 Ultra Clean, and we're going to be working with some package design, and we're going to be working with the made-up Ultra Clean name and just using it as kind of a practice exercise to work on some effects, including shearing text and adding outlines and shadows, and even adding pop dots, which we'll add when we get to Photoshop. We're going to start this exercise in Illustrator, then we're going to move to Photoshop. And just to show you a couple of finished versions in Photoshop, I'll zoom in on this just a little bit here, but here's some ultra clean versions from the past, and you can see they're using very bright colors, oranges and blues, and they have clothes on here and taglines and also pop dots. We're going to learn how to do these pop dots using channels in Photoshop. Also, you can see there's a lot of outlines that kind of go around the lettering, in some cases multiple outlines, blue outlines, white outlines, and even drop shadows. There's a starburst up here, and there's also a glow going around the starburst. Other shadows here, there's opacity changes. So there's a lot of things here to grab attention. And here's a couple other samples. Here's another one with some shirts and some clothes, starburst with the orange background and some blue pop dots as we kind of look at this a little bit. And we kind of mess around and have fun with this a little bit. It's nothing too serious. It's just a practice one before we do some real package design. Here's another one with some other clothes on here. Even got some tidy whities in here from the 70s. We have the blues and the oranges and all these different colors in here to really give it kind of a bold look, and that's what the pop dots do. They're basically kind of halftone dots that get kind of exaggerated but just filled with one color. That's why we have to use channels to do that. So we're going to do all that once we get started in Illustrator, and in Illustrator we're going to do kind of shearing. And what shearing is this text. It's kind of on an angle, except it keeps the side straight. So we're not just rotating it, we're going to give it some kind of a dynamic look by shearing it. And we're going to go to Illustrator and start on our, this is how we're going to start in Illustrator. There's just a couple layers, and just like our painting project, we're going to keep as much as we can on their own layer. You can see Ultra Clean's on its own layer, It's Clean is on its own layer, the net packaging information is on its own layer, the box is on its own layer, and I'm even going to make a new layer right now, and that's going to be for the Starburst, so I'll call that Starburst. And we're going to go back to the star tool and work with that a little bit. We might have some text above that too, so I'm even going to make another layer and call that, star text. So that's going to be text that's going to go over top of that. But then that's all we're going to do in Illustrator, and then we're going to take it to Photoshop. But the first thing I want to do is I want to click on my Ultra Clean, and I want to use the Shear tool. Now the Shear tool is underneath the Scale tool. And what shearing does is it kind of rotates, but it keeps the side straight. Kind of like if you took an empty cardboard box, like a big brown cardboard box, and just kind of squeezed on the sides and pushed one side up. It's going to kind of make a straight shape, but the sides will change a little bit. So instead of rotating, typically when you rotate, this would look like that, and it would just be on an angle. But we're not going to do that. We're going to shear it. Now when you click on the Shear tool, there's a transformation point that's down here. It may be in the middle. It may be down there. When you use that tool, you could click anywhere. That means that's where the transformation is going to originate from. So if I wanted to shear this, it's going to kind of shear from the center point. You can do that. Sometimes it's a little tougher in the middle. This tool can be a little kind of frustrating. That's why I recommend when you use this to hold Shift and just drag straight up. Don't go sideways, or you'll end up with stuff that looks like that, and then you'll be hitting Command Z to undo. So the best thing to do might be to put your transformation mark over here, your transformation point, and then just kind of drag up. And I'm just going to drag up. You can hold Shift, but if you drag straight up, it should stay on a nice angle like that. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. And then I'll also click on my It's Clean and do the same thing. And I'm going to move it up a little bit so it's a little closer, and I'm going to use the Shear tool and just kind of drag it up and try to have roughly the same angle. You could go back and re-shear it, but I'll put it like right about there. And that's all we're doing with the shearing. It's just kind of moving like that. By the way, the font we're using is Impact, which should be on every computer, and it's very condensed and bold and nice for kind of a packaging title. Next thing I'm going to do is put a Starburst over here, and I'm going to go on my Starburst layer, and I'm going to use the Star tool, which is underneath your rectangle and polygon and ellipse tools. Use the Star tool. Sometimes I find this frustrating, but basically if you drag on it, and then you could use two different keys. You could use the up arrow will add points to your star. The down arrow will decrease points on your star all the way to a triangle if you needed to make a triangle. But I'll add some more here. Also, and this is, I'm still dragging. I didn't leave go of my mouse yet. I'm still dragging. Also, what you could do is if you hold your Command key on a Mac, if you drag out, it'll make the points longer. If you drag in, it'll make the the points shallower. It's kind of shallow with a lot of points would be like a certificate, and I'll drag them out would be more like sunshine kind of point. So I'm going to go somewhere kind of in between here, and I'm going to leave go of command. Then I'm going to add a couple more points for my starburst, and it's going to be kind of cropped off the edge. So I'm going to do that right now. Now it's white right now. Let me fill it with yellow so I could kind of see where it ends. And that's kind of what I'm going to do. It's going to kind of have a look like a sunshine, and I am going to crop it. And I'm not sure if I'm going to crop it yet. To crop it, we could just use the minus front. I'll show you right away. You could just take a rectangle tool, and I'm just going to make a shape over top of that and just crop it off the edge. Now it's the yellow color right now. Maybe I'll make it white. Now I don't want you to just cover it up with white. I want you to actually put it over top and then hold the rectangle, and then if you hold shift and hold that. Now keep in mind this is permanent, so once I do this I can't move it around anymore, but I'm going to stay with this right now. And I'm going to go to my Pathfinder, and I'm going to do a minus front, and that chops off that part. And then I'll take another rectangle over here, make sure I overlap it, and it's still yellow, but I'll make there. I can make it any color I want just to be different, and I'll hold shift so I have both of these objects are selected, and I'll do minus front, and there's my starburst. And like I said, it's chopped off now, so I can't do a whole lot different things with it, but I can I can scale it a little bit if I want, but I can't alter the the points on it. So I'm going to kind of stay with that right now. Matter of fact, I'll put it a little bigger how it was, and I'm just going to throw some text over top of this. I'm just going to type new and improved. Okay, there's my new and improved. I'm going to make it bigger. I'll just highlight. I'll make it impact. So I'll go up here to character, and I'll change it to impact. I'll click on I, and I'll go find impact, which is right here. And there's impact. And I'll center it, and I could use this tool to center it. If you can't find some of these tools, you could bring up the character palette, which may be over here, or you could go to Window and then look for Type and bring out the character palette. I like using the character palette. It'll show you the previews of what the font looks like. And for the color of this, I'm actually I'll take the eyedropper, I think, and kind of sample the color. Here's my eyedropper. I'll sample that blue color, and unfortunately, you see what it did. It actually sampled the text as well. So you can double click on the eyedropper and make sure that it doesn't take the character style. So I'll uncheck character style here and paragraph style and hit OK, and then I'll undo this. And then I'll try that again, and now it just takes the color. And what I'm going to do, I'll keep it centered like that. I'll also make the leading a little bit tighter. Now the leading is the line spacing, and that's actually shown in the character part, not the paragraph, even though it seems like a paragraph setting. And I'm just going to hit the leading. I'll zoom into this a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. Adjusting the leading so the line spacing is tighter. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shear this as well. And I'm going to zoom out so I can see that it's going to shear at roughly the same angle. So I'm going to take my shear tool and just kind of drag up on a corner. And that looks about the same angle. And I'm going to put this over here. Now I'm going to put a white outline around it. Now I put it on the wrong layer. I know that because I'm still in the Starburst layer, and I want this on a separate layer so I could work with it independently in Photoshop so I could do different effects on it. Illustrator makes it real nice to do that. If you see this little dot here, just drag that dot up to the new layer. Now it's on its new layer. Now it's so you don't have to cut and paste or anything to put it on its own layer. So now this is up here. I'm going to put a little white. You could put a white outline on it. So I could put white on here using the outline tool. Now a couple things you could do if you go in the stroke palette, it will not let you put the stroke on the outside of it. Here, a line stroke. It doesn't do that with text. That's kind of a pain. So I'm going to take this off. And what I'll do basically is go into my appearance palette, and if you remember doing this with some other exercises, you can add an extra stroke to it, and I'll make it white, and I'll increase it quite a bit. Now it's going to fill in. You can see it's going over top of the blue that I have, so I'm also going to add a fill to it, and I'm going to change this blue to the blue that I have in here. And what I should do, so I see this in here, I'm going to go to my swatches, and I'm going to go click off of here, and I'm going to sample this blue color. I'm going to take my eyedropper again, click on my blue, so that blue goes in here. I'm going to drag my blue over here so it's a color in here. That way when I click on this again and I go into my appearance palette and I have that fill appearance, I could click on here and choose the blue color. That's the same one now. And that means that's going to go in front of that stroke that I put on there. So I could turn those effects off if I wanted to, but I'm going to actually put them on. and keep that on there. That way, if I increase my stroke, if I click on here and I go up, you can see it's going to be behind. No matter how thick I go, it'll be behind the text. It won't be in front because I have a fill effect that's in front and I have a stroke effect that's behind. So I'll leave it at like 6 for now, and I'll kind of put that in there. And it doesn't matter if it goes over that a little bit. That's okay. I think it has a nice look to it. So, and you could do things for this too. You could add extra strokes. I think I'm going to wait and do some of that in Photoshop rather than doing it here, because you can do strokes in Photoshop. You can also do extra fills, so you kind of have different layers of color. So I think I'm going to wait and do any of that in Photoshop. So now I do have some layers here that I want to work with in Photoshop. I have my star text, Starburst, Ultra Clean, It's Clean, Net, Box Outline. What I'm going to do right now, because it's ready to go to Photoshop, is I'm going to do a file export. First of all, I'm going to save it with my name. So I'll save it, and I already have one started here, so I'll call it Homa R2. So it's not the one that I had already started in class, and I'll put a 2 after that. And I'll hit save. And that's just my Illustrator file. Then what I'm going to do, like what we did with our paintings, is I'm going to go File, Export, and I'm going to save a Photoshop file. So I'm going to choose Photoshop from my list. It'll be PSD. And there it is. I can keep it the same name, and I'll hit Export. Now when it comes up, it's saying Color Model CMYK, and you want to keep it in the same one you're working in. So that's fine. You might want to change it when you get to Photoshop. You could put it in RGB when you get to Photoshop, but right now keep them the same, or else it won't let you, it'll turn off writing layers. So make sure you keep it the same color mode when it does the transfer. And also, I'm also going to change this a little bit higher. I'm going to take it up. It's just a practice file, so I'll take it up to like 200 pixels per inch, which should make that fairly clean as far as what we're working in Photoshop. And make sure you check layers here. And that's what I'm going to do. So 200 pixels per inch, I'm exporting as a Photoshop file. I'll hit OK. And that's done. And now if I go to Photoshop, I could do File Open and open up that file. And it's an exercise, so it's EX3 Ultra Clean. Here's the one I just did. I want to open up the Photoshop one, and it should open up in Photoshop with layers intact, giving me some message about fonts. And if there's something that has to get cropped here, there's a little bit of extra space because of the Starburst, that's okay. Here's all our layers, and what we're going to do next is just do some effects on here, and we're going to do the pop dots.